Hello, welcome to We're Not Wizards. Back in March of last year, Kolossal Games were on a juggernaut train of epic Kickstarter proportions in terms of bringing out game after game to the Kickstarter platform. And one of the games that they brought out was Kami-sama. Now, I just wanted to, show you it. Because I've not seen an awful lot of stuff about Kami-sama, and I thought I should maybe tell a few people about Kami-sama, because I kind of have played Kami-sama, and I've continually drifted back and forward into my mind about when I could be possibly playing it again, which is always interesting when a game does that. I think that's a kind of a good indication of potentially how good a game could be. It was designed by AJ Lambeth, who was on the show when the game was originally kickstarted. It's illustrated by Gong Studios. I mean, the first thing to point out is the presentation on this game it's extremely pleasing to the eye. I am a huge art snob. I do love things that look fantastic, and if a game is very, very well illustrated, then it's a chance, it's going to win some kudos with me. Kami-sama itself is all about placing these beautiful little shrine tokens during your turn. Basically, you play like a spirit, and the idea is you're trying to build as many shrines as possible. You are trying to gain influence within an area, and influence allows you to collect villagers that give you special bonuses, and at the end of the day, having lots of villagers also gives you lots and lots of lovely points, which is the whole point of the game. You are aiming to get yourself as far up this track as possible, by any means necessary. And it's kind of interesting because, as you can see, we've got shrines, little shrines all over the board. Now, this is a double layered board, so the shrines will stick into particular spaces. And we've got some lovely little areas. This is our wealth area. We've got our fishing village. We've got our farming area, and we've got our spiritual area. And the idea is you're trying to lay your shrines every season. So you'll be playing through seasons, and every season what will happen is that you will basically be trying to place shrines. But how do you do that? Well, you got these. So you've got character cards. Now there's 8 of them. There's 8 different characters that you get to play with. There's an expansion box that's also got another pile of characters as well. And the thing about Kami-sama is each of these characters is completely, well, first of all, they're completely gorgeous in terms of the art, and secondly, they're also completely unique as well. And that is the point, is that when you're playing your game, you will basically get little cubes, and your little cubes will allow you to carry out certain actions. So in this case, Gensui, I can add a shrine. If I place one of my cubes here, I'm going to add a shrine adjacent to an opponent's shrine in any village. That opponent gains 1 favour or 1 nature. Yeah, at the top of all of these. You've got a favour and a nature track. They play an important part in the scoring part of the game to help you decide how many victory points you could potentially get for that round. Each of these characters have got their own little, almost like pigtails, almost like different skills, different strategies that can help you, bring you to the table, and hopefully bring you to victory. What's interesting is that you will essentially use the actions that you have in order to place down your shrines. Now, placing down shrines in certain areas gives you favour, gives you nature, allows you to go up your little track. The other thing you've got to bear in mind is that, and this is where the brain burning starts to come in this game, you got to take into account that you also have goals for a particular year. Now, for the first year, that could be something simple like, as we've got here, controlling 3 spaces in this pattern. And as you can see, this is almost as if I planned it. You know, we've got three shrines in this pattern. What does that mean? Well, this is the money village, okay? On each of my character cards, and you can't really make it out because it's meant to be quite faded, you've got a little space. Now what will happen is, I've fulfilled the requirement for this particular village, so I'm going to get a token, and I am going to place my money token right there. If I manage to, as I go around, if I manage to complete other requirements, then I'll be able to fill this up with the various tokens that are required. Once I do that, I can trade that in for 6 victory points. 6, which in the scheme of things can give you a massive boost. So you've got to take that into consideration. Once you've played your season, it spins round clockwise. So the board you've just been playing on is potentially getting played on by somebody else. And they're gonna, be placing, you've now faced with the fact that you've got somebody else's shrines potentially in your way. You might decide that this time you're gonna play. Now you can't be taking shrines from where you've just played. You've got a little supply that you're going to use. Once your supply runs out, you're finished. That's it. You got to start then maybe removing shrines from other places. So you've got your basic actions that you could do on your cards as well, which is the same thing. You can add or remove, a shrine to a current village, or you can move a shrine, or you can replace a shrine. But you're kind of try to do this resource management to make sure that, well, have I got enough shrines in this particular kind of village? And the reason for that is, at the end of, once you've rotated this all the way around and you get round to the beginning or the end of the year, then you then take into account how many shrines you've got in each of the villages. And if you've got the most shrines connected in a village, then for that village, for instance, this is the money one, I get a villager card. So, some of these are really, really good. Gain 3 favour, gain 2 nature. Replace a shrine in a hut in this village. You may complete a goal in this way. So you've got to take this into consideration as well. And you've got to take into account that at any time, somebody could be winding themselves up to play one of the special moves that they've kind of got in the characters. The idea is that at the end of the year, you top up your influence, you get your villagers, you gain your victory points, you keep on going until you get to the end of the 3rd year. Now, as you go through the years, you might notice there's a little kind of foregrid here. Now, that means you're getting extra cubes. So in year 2, you get extra actions. Year 3, you get an even extra action. So by the time you get into the 3rd year, you've got maybe got the chance to play more shrines, but you might not want to play the more shrines, because if you run out of shrines, then you might have to start removing shrines from places in order to kind of repeat into your supply. In terms of learning and picking it up, it's a fairly kind of straightforward affair. The rule book's okay. It's a lot of the stuff in Kami-sama is very much kind of style, maybe over organisation. It's kind of okay. I did end up kind of flicking back and forward. It's not a terrible thing. I mean, there's a bit of not formatting issues, but there's a bit of cases of them how they've obviously done a couple of last minute revisions to the rule book, and they've accidentally numbered stuff, which is fine. They've got a lovely little kind of glossary on the back to tell you where everything is, and they've got thank yous and the contributors, I would have probably moved that inside, because there was plenty of kind of landscape here to put a kind of a lovely summary of all the moves that you take into the game. Because once you've got it, it kind of clicks. You know, it's a fairly kind of easy game to kind of play and understand. But yeah, so it's kind of cool. But there is kind of there's a kind of a concern. It's not a major concern. You know, it's nothing to stop you from playing the game. However, I mean, this is lovely. And all the components are lovely. And the characters are lovely. But there's quite a few of them. Now, in terms of how most people play games, unless a game becomes like a firm favourite, like say Root, and this is surprisingly enough because it almost kind of shares, you know, several commonalities with Root in terms of you have asymmetrical players that, while they're kind of serving an overall common goal in terms of victory points, they have individual kind of characters and special powers which allow them to do things. But the difference in Root is that the character powers, they're fairly straightforward. You're not likely to get particularly confused. My major concern with Kami-sama, for all its loveliness and for how easy it is to play, the individual characters make such a difference to how the game potentially plays, that unless as an individual you have played through the characters, you could find yourself trying to adopt a strategy which maybe just isn't going to stop your opponent from winning if they are playing a certain way. And we certainly found that in the game that we had, which people were able to gain easily, rack up kind of favour points by doing certain facts, like the lunar pool. Move one of your shrines in your current village to any village, gain one favour or one nature. So you're allowed to do that. I think this was the main one. Putting down your seed tokens and then replacing gaining one favour or one nature for every seed token that was replaced in this way. Unless you're aware of all the characters, then you're not going to be aware of all the strategies. And you can argue that's going to be the same for every kind of game. But my concern with that is that, as I say, unless Kami-sama is going to be something you're going to be getting to the table on a really, really regular basis, you might get a couple of games where somebody has a really, really brilliant character that just manages to be able to continually rack up the favour and the nature points, thus claiming the victory points, thus rocketing away at the rate of knots, and it can be very, very difficult to kind of catch up. That being said, I mean, this is just like, you know, this is the first impressions of the game. I potentially could be completely wrong. I would say that if you are looking at Kami-sama just now, then it's definitely worthwhile checking out. If somebody is offering or asking if you want to play a game of it, then it's definitely worthwhile playing a game, because there's some seriously nice work that's gone into putting this game together, and I would hate it's getting passed over because of the fact it was kind of a part of a juggernaut that Kolossal Games kind of put out at the time. It was fun. I kind of enjoyed it. As I say, it's kind of slipped back into my mind now and again. I'm interested to see how the different powers would balance. It's got a lovely kind of solo play variant as well, which is quite simple and kind of almost elegant in terms of you can dip in. So yeah, check it out. See if you can get a game of it. If you like it, then you can make the decision for yourself. But this has just been a little We're Not Wizards sideways glance. Is this when you do the YouTube thing? Like, subscribe, bell, I don't know. Watch the video, I bet. It's always a good one, I guess. And remember, you can check us out on our normal channels through the Twitters and the Facebooks, and also listen to the podcast as well. My name's Richard. This is We're Not Wizards. But until the next time, stay safe, roll sixes, and maybe think about getting yourself a wee shrine. Until the next time, goodbye.